Well, hello, Obsessives, and welcome back. This is episode 28 of the comic Obsessive, and so long as I'm still right about this, and I think my birth certificate is correct, my name is Jason Dehart, and I'm joined by...
Adam Piles.
And we are here to bring you a very, very special, they're all very special to us, why would I even say anything else, episode of the comic Obsessive, talking about a lovely little book called Murder Falcon. So, Adam, I have a couple of music-related questions to throw your way because there's this really cool relationship between music and comics that sometimes I see it in the work of like Simon Beasley and creators like that, and definitely Daniel Warren Johnson, who, did you know, he plays the guitar? Did you know that?
So I do now because I read the, I was reading this. I don't know exactly what it's called now. It was on the old Comixology. It still says Comixology on mine, but the little intro, I think, to it. Yep. The metal will destroy all evil, and then like a little note from Daniel Warren Johnson. So he talks about how it's kind of like a little love letter to all the things he likes, metal and bands and things like that. So
Yeah.
pretty cool. Let's see. He's been playing since he was 11. So
Yeah.
that's a long time to play.
I'm also happy to report that Daniel Warren Johnson is a delight when you meet him in person. I met him 2 years ago at this show that we go to sometimes called Heroes Con. Now, Adam, have you heard of Heroes Con?
Maybe.
Yes,
Maybe.
yeah.
No, it's the highlight of my year.
Yeah. Well, the line a couple of years ago for Daniel Warren Johnson was not too bad, so I got in. And you can always learn a lot about a creator just by watching them kind of interact with people. And I was watching people go up and get their book signed. They have like hardcover editions, and it wasn't just like a signature from Daniel Warren Johnson. He would take the time to do a little sketch, and not just a sketch, but like we're talking different colors of markers. Like he was doing big swishy images of Murder Falcon in people's books. He'd pull out a red marker, a white marker, throw in a little black ink here and there, and it's just cool. And just somebody that have I used the word flourish yet on here?
I don't think so.
He creates with flourish. And so then when I got up there to his table, I was really curious to check out do the power bomb, I believe is what that one's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was curious to check that out. So of course I picked up an issue of that, and he drew up Batman for me, of all things. Kelly Jones Ears Batman. So just a lovely person, currently working on Transformers, and I think he's going to go places. I could be wrong, but I think he's gonna totally go places.
Yeah, I
Personally.
mean, his line this year was pretty dang huge.
He also works with Mike Spicer quite a bit. Mike Spicer is listed as an artist as well. Um, he worked on the Batman First Night series that we were reading by Dan Jurgens as well.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it looks like at least the first 6 issues are him pulling double duty. He's been a busy guy. I better sum up the issue. Well, actually, the book really quickly, and then we'll circle back and talk some more about our love of music and Daniel Warren Johnson and such things. And I got a few other musical questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to answer them, but I'll be happy to entertain them.
Certainly, lots of fun. So, if you have not read Murder Falcon, this is a time to question what you're doing with your life, because it's just a great book. And to be honest, I had not discovered it until a few years ago. I'll tell you the origin story of how I got into it just in a little while after we do the official summary. But and scene, we're on the street. There's a huge monster that's about to just devour everything. In steps a guy with long blonde hair, looking very sort of Axl Rose like in a way, very Axl Rose like. And he pulls out an electric guitar. And you're like, what is this guy doing? He starts to, I believe the word is shred. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Yep. He starts to shred the guitar, which I'm told means you play it well. And a large Falcon man with cybernetic add-on features appears. Okay, picture this, and defeats the monster. And that is Murder Falcon right there. That's the Murder Falcon. He comes from a mythical universe, a place out there where there's giant hammer just hanging around, and he shows up when the main character Jake shreds. Now that's kind of the like just couple of first pages. You can find that on Google previews or whatever. But where the story goes from there is really really cool because in the first couple of issues, there's a may I use the word pathos on here?
Yeah.
There's a pathos to the story. There's something that has affected Jake's life that is troubling him. It's kind of a demon in his own bottle, if you will. Enjoy the Stark reference there. And you don't quite know exactly what it is. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because you have to read the books. And by the time you get to the last issue, it punches in the gut. At least it did for me. And Daniel Warren Johnson, I was reading an interview with him with the Comic Book Reporter, and he was talking about how emotional that book was to write as well. Along the way, though, you've got these monsters that appear, and you can see like the early seeds of somebody that would be ideal to work on Transformers because there's one that kind of looks like a Shogun warrior. There are ones that look kind of Transformers like. I mean, they show up throughout the issues, and Jake has to summon the Murder Falcon to come and defeat these creatures because they're all being sent by this thing that kind of looks like a ganglion, kind of like a cancer cell. So this is a Magnum Chaos is the
Yeah.
character, and he is causing all kinds of problems. You also get to meet side characters. There's a bass player who can summon a huge mastodon, and I don't even know where to start with the art. I'm going to confine a lot of my comments and appreciation to the first issue for that reason. But there's just so much happening in the book that is so super cool. And I'll also say you pick up some B stories here, you pick up romance. Jake has had a relationship with a person and rekindles that relationship throughout the book, and you get to revisit what's happening. We just get to see some of the chaos that's been unleashed in their life. And to me, it's a story about how like music can kind of get you through and defeat the monsters in your life in a way. And there's a moment at the end, in the very end, where we can censor this part if we want, but Jake kind of accepts the things that are going on in his life, and it's a huge moment. It's a huge moment. So how was that as a summary? I was trying to leave some mystery there as well.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of
Well,
leaving the
thanks,
mystery.
thanks. I'm just after all the compliments here. So just a fantastic book, and if you've not read Murder Falcon, do yourself a favor, check that out. Check out Space Mullet. Check out JLA Jurassic Age. Check out Dead Earth. Daniel Warren Johnson draws large monsters and spiders like no one else, and you definitely have the story beats that are there as well. So Adam, first of all, do you play a musical instrument?
I don't. I don't. I have tried over the years. I've always been interested in electric guitar or bass, but no, I don't. I don't.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you?
I do not, unless you count the invisible harmonica, which is just me blowing into my hands,
Right.
which is always awkward. I don't. If you could play a musical instrument, what would it be?
I would say um, it'd be a hard choice between those two I mentioned, the guitar or the bass, because I love the deep notes of the bass. But you know, everybody knows and loves the electric guitar, especially in the realm of rock, and it's what our main guy plays here. So,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
I would have to, I'm a little quirky, so I would have to go with like triangle or cowbell or something
okay,
like
yeah,
that.
more cowbell. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
everything, everything could always use more cowbell.
Absolutely. So if you could, sorry to keep piling on the questions here, but if you could play any instrument, you would play the electric guitar. What creature would you summon with a guitar if you could?
What creature you mean, like from Murder Falcon
Or of your
selection?
own invention. You could select it from the book or just on your own.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. Maybe a gigantic gorilla. That feels
Nice.
that feels very metal.
Feels
Uh,
very metal, very Gorilla Grodd.
yeah, that kind of strength and could be brutality in there. What about you? What would you summon?
Well, if it was the triangle, I would have to go actually with like a sea creature. Something I think it's Bermuda Triangle that gets me with that. I think like, in Alan Moore's Watchmen, the squid kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
Maybe sort of like a sky moving squid. But if it was the cowbell, I mean, obviously, if we're going to play on motifs here, I would go with like a giant steer, that could just come in
okay,
and like pummel the different parts of your life. Also have a connection to the panther, not because I live in North Carolina or anything, but I've just always thought that that was a cool animal.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. A tiger would be awesome,
Very much. Very, very metal.
but also maybe just a Sasquatch.
I would love that. Yeah.
Wouldn't that?
Yeah.
You talked a lot about or you mentioned the art, how
Mm-hmm.
he he was holding down the art duties with this, but the colorist, that Mike Spicer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the coloring in this, to have maybe some darker themes. I mean, it's a fun story, but it also has its loss and um, its sad moments. Um, but even with all that in tow, the colorist, that Mike Spicer, and the colors that he chose, his palette for the pages, it's just so fun. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
so fun, even with
Mm-hmm.
such sometimes serious story beats. It's just such a fun looking book. Um, Johnson's art and Mike Spicer's colors, that's just a perfect combo in my opinion.
Agree, agree. And there's also the lettering, which lettering is not always the thing that people necessarily comment on when they're reading comics. It's one of those things that I'm told is kind of like if you're doing your job, people don't notice.
Right.
But Russ Wooten on this lettering, I believe in his original vision, Daniel Warren Johnson was going to letter himself, and then Russ Wooten came on as a letterer and really adapted to the style and really brought a style that was very Warren Johnson like. Um, but just a very cool thing of like when something happens in the book, you get like a swipe or a swish or whatever
Right.
onomatopoeia it happens to be. Uh, at page two would be a great place to look for that because at the start at the top of the page in the first panel, you've got a van, so we got that. We got a monster, so you got that, and then there's like the e,
Yep.
like the thing is just kind of speeding on, and then in the next panel down, I mean, you got two examples of what I'm talking about here, where we're shifting the gears with check and then stepping out, and I'm not always a person that thinks that every movement in a comic needs an onomatopoeia like reaction, but the way that they pull it off just adds some really cool beauty to the book that also kind of makes it distinctive to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, Looking at these pages that you just caught our attention to with like the shifting of gears and everything, it also had its little funny beats too. Like maybe this is just my own kind of warped sense of humor, but he pulls up in this van. Who are you? Me? I'm Jake. And then like you hear the scream, it's going to eat a baby. For me,
Hmm.
that's just funny. Just
Yeah.
off panel, it's going to eat a baby, and then yeah, he takes care of it all with the entrance of Murder Falcon.
Oh yeah. Well, the entrance of Murder Falcon is awesome, and that panel where he says "I'm Jake," just that like close up. That's like, kind of the close on the eyes, Clint Eastwood kind of look. Yeah, and then to have the like aside, very much, very the lovely humor there. He says, "I brought metal." And then he did indeed bring metal because by the time we get to the next page, just a few pages over, there's a Murder Falcon. And I mean, we've got more of that kind of action wording going on there. The lightning is striking. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I kind of feel like Murder Falcon could live in the same universe as Thor. I think that would be really interesting. Throw in a
Yeah,
little Beta Ray Bill there as well.
yeah. I'd like to see a team up.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
What have you read the entire arc? I'm assuming you have because
I
you
did.
are. Yes. What about the part, and I don't want to give away too much here, but what about the part where Murder Falcon loses his cybertronic, I don't know the correct word here,
Is it
cybernetic
like
arm?
bionic arm? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And you're like, "Oh no, what's he gonna do?" And then that thing happens.
That was it was both brutal and then like just a very cool story beat when that the new add-on pops up, you know, we'll
Yes, yeah,
call it that. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
amazing stuff.
And you could tell like this is work. Comics are a heck of a lot of work, but Daniel Warren Johnson at least makes it look fun.
Yeah.
At least. How did you become acquainted? Do you remember how you first became aware of his work?
Let's see. I think I think the first real thing I read by him was Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd heard of Murder Falcon, but I hadn't read it. And then, read it based off of your recommendation. But did you say that he did the, what was it? Jurassic League?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think the art drew me to that, and that was before Transformers. So I think I kind of like sampled him there. And then the Transformers, I felt like it was very much in vein with this, like with um, its color palette and page design and everything. So um, I guess that would have been it. It would have been the Jurassic League, and then the Transformers, and then this Murder Falcon here. And
Yeah.
I'm already looking forward to his new book in the fall. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm now a Daniel Warren Johnson fanboy.
Yeah, and he definitely, for the quality that he brings, definitely deserves the fanboys. I was acquainted with him through a fanboy. I did an interview. I was working on like a research project thingy, like I like to do for fun. And I was interviewing this comics creator that did his graduate thesis at a college with which we're both familiar. Uh, in comic book form. And I was like, "Well, who do you like? Who's cool to you?" And he was like, "Oh, Daniel Warren Johnson." And I was like, "Oh." And so, I made a quick note, go check this guy out. And that's when I first became acquainted with Murder Falcon, Space Mullet, all of those kind of things. And he just seems to have taken off in major threads since then.
And I don't know. Um, I feel like really good cartoonists can really create some almost cinematic experiences on the page
Mm-hmm.
where I think it's just there's some flashbacks going on with Jake, and he's sitting there with Murder Falcon. Um, and then when you turn the page, it's just Jake and Murder Falcon sitting on top of the van,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that creature is out there in the water.
Yeah.
And Murder Falcon says, "How long has that creature been there?" Just the way that's set up and the way those pages are presented, it feels like you're watching a movie. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
definitely. Definitely. And spoiler alert, of course, it's like, anytime somebody says nobody's ever been to the Mount Doom, of course something's going to happen with that creature in the water.
Yeah,
Of course it is.
yeah,
But beautiful panel there too.
yeah,
is that a splash page in your copy?
yeah. It is.
With two little inset panels, like the
Hmm.
two of them looking out on top of the van, just kind of chilling after they've destroyed monsters and done things. And these monsters are not pretty.
No,
They could use a good dentist.
definitely. It just again, kudos to the art, both Johnson and Spicer, because that could have been a mess.
Yeah.
That big splash page that we're looking at, but it is so crystal clear what is going on and where the creature begins and ends, and the foreground and the background, and you can see the town in the background just clear as day, even though it's like hinted at. It's not. It's just really, really amazing art.
Yeah.
Um, in some ways, it's almost a sketchy type of art, but in other ways, it's so detailed too. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially, I can't find it right now, but there's a page where they're looking at the city. Well, even when they go down into to find um, we'll say find more weapons when they're in that realm.
Hmm.
Just the details that he puts into his art and this coloring and how it separates it. It's just amazing.
Totally,
Just a
totally.
really, really good job.
And you know what I think about, and I don't know if this is a true inspiration or not. I'm going to have to do my homework on this. But when I look up at that night sky, there's a particular artist that I think about who had a particular VHS series in the 90s.
Uh, an artist with a VHS series.
Oh yeah, he had VHS copies about how to make comics, and one of the things that I remember him saying saliently was creating stars with kind of like that toothbrush method.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, there's just something, and again, I don't know if this is an influence or not, but a very McFarlane kind of thing happening there, just in the way that the sky kind of looks, and not that McFarlane invented that technique, but just reminds me very much of that.
Yep. I can see the influence there. I can see the influence. What so what type of music are you into before I
I Yeah, I listen to pretty much anything and everything. So here's my current Spotify playlist. I do enjoy a little bit of the uh, kind of like 80s and 90s classic rock vibes. I have an appreciation for AC/DC right now,
Okay.
that I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it's going, but I like it. The U2 band, the band U2, I just said
Mhm.
that like in a really old way. Uh, I have their station playing, and then I'll listen to some Billy Joel here and there of the Aerosmith station. And then every now and then I get a wild hair and I listen to even some like contemporary Christian stuff, or country slash bluegrass. So I'm all over the place as far as musical taste. And what I love is when you find people that on paper have no business being together and they're making music. Like there's a song by and I don't remember the title, but it's got Bruno Mars, it's got Ed Sheeran,
All right.
and Chris Stapleton.
Okay. All right.
And I love to hear like how each person kind of brings their flavor, you know.
Yeah.
So the only thing I'm really not into music wise, I would say, I can even jam out to some jazz, or move around to some Mozart if I can be a little unnecessarily poetic there. I'm not a huge death metal fan. Not
Hmm.
a huge death metal fan, but heavy metal I can definitely appreciate and enjoy. What about you?
Well, I would say I'm a little bit all over the map too, but if you just had to pin down one genre, it would be rock. I do love the rock. I even love the metal. Um, again, well, not again, but like you mentioned, death metal. How that's not your. I get that. I get that. I've tried it.
Hmm.
Um, I can't find the melody in it, and that sounds weird, but my friends and I were, you know, coming up in the 90s and listening to a bunch of heavier rock music, and there was one band that really um, it really popped in my mind as I was reading like the battle scenes
Hmm. Hmm.
with this, and that would have to be a band kind of obscure maybe. Have you ever heard of a band called Helmet?
Yes. Oh yeah, I've heard of Hellbent. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Helmet, and there's a couple of songs. One is called Ironhead. Um, and one of their, to me, one of their best albums is In the Meantime. Um, oh my gosh. I feel like that is like the soundtrack for this book. And I would love to ask Daniel Warren Johnson kind of what he heard as he was drawing this stuff, as he was writing this stuff,
Yeah.
like what
Yeah.
his inspiration was for it, like in particular what music would he see in a movie version of this. I think
Yeah.
that'd be interesting.
Who would be on the soundtrack of Murder Falcon? That's a really good question.
But it was a great experience. I got it from Comixology, but then I loved it so much I was just kind of poking around on eBay to see if there was anything interesting with Murder Falcon,
Hmm.
and I found um, this number one that was apparently limited to 500 copies, and I think I texted you this already.
Yes, that's the cover photo. If listeners out there are enjoying the image, yeah, the
Yeah,
cover photo.
and that is such a great homage to that. What was it, king-sized Hulk one, where uh, he's holding up Incredible Hulk, and it says "Battle the Inhumans" at the bottom.
Hmm.
But his little homage here is just pitch perfect. Just a great job, and the design of the character is so perfect too.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
tell that it came out of the '90s.
yes,
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
he's about our age, right?
I think so. I think so. And you can see some like maybe there's a little Eric Larson in the mix, a little Jim Valentino in the mix somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but just the design of the character, it certainly kind of speaks '90s to me. I mean, he's even wearing like cargo pants at some point,
Yes.
doesn't he? So,
Yes, he
like,
is.
and the bandana. I mean, I guess a bandana might have been more '80s, but still,
It bleeds over. It bleeds over. I think. Yeah.
good
Um,
stuff.
Yeah, and there. This is a breadcrumb trail of some research for folks out there that want to read a little bit more. But I'm told that, and I'm not nearly enough of a metalhead to know this, but I'm told that there are a couple of covers in the original run that are throwbacks to album covers. So the design and the way that the characters are positioned kind of throw back to some metal covers.
Oh, dang.
Uh, yeah.
Being on Comixology, I didn't see that. To me, it was all just like one big book. But
Same. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's see here. I wonder if I can. No, it's not gonna let me do that. I was hoping to be able to scroll through um, some covers quickly, but I don't have that ability right now.
Yeah. Well, here's a resource from NPR that says Murder Falcon is also full of metal references, from the Pelican and Power Trip patches on a character's battle vest to a run of variant comic book covers playing on classic metal album artwork like Bolt Thrower's War Master, Iron Maiden's Somewhere in Time, and Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
Yeah. So love the thought, and being somebody that loves metal, which is Daniel Warren Johnson. I mean, I appreciate it. Uh, love that he invited collaborators and also put those influences in his book for himself.
Absolutely. And I feel like there just there's already a tailor-made connection between comics and metal because both are kind of extreme versions of their genre, their storytelling or their music, right?
Hmm.
I just feel like they already uh, have such a perfect little relationship there, and for him to explore it so directly inside the narrative, I thought was such a cool idea, such a great idea. It reminded me of are you a Stranger Things fan?
To my chagrin, I've actually never watched it. I've seen some of the comics, but I've never watched it.
What? That's crazy.
I know.
It's
I
it's
know.
really good. It's really good. And this, well, see, I don't want to ruin it for you. I don't want to spoil it for you.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I can read the plot of a movie and still enjoy the movie because part of it to me is like how they do that.
Well, there is like one of the scenes from Stranger Things really, it was like right in the forefront of my mind when I was reading a lot of these scenes, and it's in I think the last season, and it's where see it's been too long since I've watched it. I think Eddie is his name, and he plays guitar, and so there's at one point where Eddie is like basically distracting the bad guys, the monsters, and
Hmm.
he is shredding on a Metallica song, and it is one of the greatest, like most fun scenes of any TV show I think I've ever seen because it's very dramatic. It's
Yeah.
very it you know it's the scene that people say, or it's the scene that people think of when you say that's so metal. Like, it's just not
Nice.
only is the song metal, but just its setup and its appearance, it's great. It's awesome. You got to watch. You got to at least watch that scene. As soon as we get off here, I'm going to send you that scene.
Yes, yes, I would love to see that. I'm
Yeah.
already thinking about the music that we can use as the intro and outro here. Something very Murder Falcon-y, and I need a Murder Falcon action figure in my life. I think
Yeah.
that would be cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That would be great. I was hoping to find more things with Murder Falcon on eBay, but I didn't really see too much.
Yeah,
Apparently, there had been a shirt, but I can't find that shirt anymore.
I would
Um,
wear that shirt. I would wear a Murder Falcon shirt any day.
yeah, yeah, I'd wear the heck out of it. That's in on the back. It even said like World Tour, and one of the tour stops was Heroes Con.
Love it, love it.
Yeah, yeah. So very, very cool little marriage of music and comics that was just right up my alley. That I had no real concept of. So I appreciate you suggesting it.
Yeah, yeah. It has some of those like it's a book that has indie feels, which I appreciate a good indie comic.
Oh yeah,
But it also has like mainstream, like you were saying, it feels like a kind of a sketch, but also finished and polished. So it has a nice mixture of those. And it's pretty unique, in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff out there, so it's hard to find unique. But I would say that when you see a Daniel Warren Johnson creature, unless it's somebody pretending to be Daniel Warren Johnson, or shouldn't say pretending, taking great influence, it's probably going to stand out.
yeah,
It's most likely going to look like a Daniel Warren Johnson creature. Just my opinion.
yep, absolutely. Well, all right. Do we have anything else for Murder Falcon here?
Let's see. How many electric guitars do we give it?
I mean, out of what? Out of five?
Five's good. Five's good. I
Okay.
like I like even numbers, so let's go with five.
Yeah, I would say absolutely 5 of 5.
Same, same.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
also love when I tell students that they look at me like that's not an even number.
right.
You know that, sir, right? Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yep. Um, I wish it had been an ongoing in some ways, but in some ways it was perfect the way it was.
True, true. Who knows? Maybe there will be a Murder Falcon Returns. As you said, the character arc, the way that it all ties up, and again, it's a gut punch at the end. So have your Kleenexes ready. But it fits together really well in the story, the way that it's told. I don't know that everything needs a sequel, but at the same time, maybe in Daniel Warren Johnson's writer brain, thunder will strike.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. Well, where
Yeah.
are we headed next with the podcast? We got
We
anything on the horizon?
I was thinking we should have a guest. I was thinking we should have someone, and as sure as I say this, hopefully he won't back out or have a commitment come up. But have you ever heard of a guy named Tom DeFalco?
I have, and I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, yeah. Just a few days away from recording with Tom DeFalco. After we conclude this episode, I'll be sending along some questions that we've crafted for Mr. DeFalco. He's a very kind person, very kind person. Had the chance to talk with him in person at Heroes Con as well. And yeah, so looking forward to that. And I believe we have an issue, not like a problem, but like a comic book issue.
Well, we have
uh,
problems too, but
Sure, everybody does, yeah.
yeah.
But what would be the comic that we might be reading in the background of this conversation with Mr. DeFalco?
Well, Tom DeFalco is such a prolific writer. Like he would get on something, like he wouldn't do, 2 or 3 or 6 issues of something. He would be on titles for years. And
Hmm.
so one of his titles was The Mighty Thor. And he did something quite different. He brought in the old Thor was basically out of commission. And so he put in this new character named Eric Masterson. And
Yes.
so I love those stories. And so it was such a continuous story arc that I tried to look for one that could be like a one and done type thing. And I found issue 444, and it is a Christmas issue. And it's got like all the story beats of Eric Masterson's arc kind of in one comic. And
Hmm.
so I would like to read that and talk about that and ask questions about that one, and maybe even one from when the old school, the OG Thor was still in control of the book, and that would have been, is it 411? Did I get the number right?
Oh yeah, you are the expert there. You are
I
the
think
expert there.
I think it's 411, and that should be the first appearance, first real appearance of the New Warriors. And I think
Nice.
Tom DeFalco co-created them.
Cool, cool, cool. We can talk some New Warriors. When I telegraph him later, I might even say, what would be a favorite issue of yours? That could be an interesting thing to sort of mention. And we'll, of course, mention we're reading this, but I also love the work that he's done, not to get into that episode, but I love the work that he's done recently on Secret Wars Battle World
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
with Pat Olive. So,
yeah. Because
gosh,
he,
if we
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. So, if we ever get him on, we could always talk about that. Just
Yeah,
saying.
and he was, it's nice that he revisited the whole Secret Wars era because he was the
Yeah.
one. Yeah, he was writing Spidey at the time, and I think was writing some of the first black suit issues of Spider-Man. And there's another run that he did that I might have to pick his brain about a little because I feel like it's just a magnificent, awesome run, but I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. And it's
Hmm.
the Fantastic Four run he did with Paul Ryan.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Who later became a senator? Is that the same Paul Ryan?
No, no, wrong guy,
Oh,
wrong
sorry,
guy.
sorry.
Much to my chagrin, because yeah, I looked up Paul Ryan and was trying to figure out, I don't know, look into the artist a little bit, but sadly, he passed away. Uh,
Oh,
I think several years ago now at this point, but um, he was a true talent as well. I loved his art. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, we have much to talk about, much to explore with Mr. DeFalco. So if you're an obsessive out there and you're following along, we're hoping that you stay tuned, tune in, and all of those things. We hope you stay obsessive. Anything that we want to close with as far as memories of this year's Heroes Con?
memories of this year's Heroes Con. Um, well, I did something that I've always thought about doing, but it was to me outside of my means. But this year, I didn't buy a lot of comics, and,
Hmm.
and so I came back with very few comics. And so instead, I spent money on something that I think is pretty cool, and it was a sketch of the Silver Surfer, like a head sketch by Ron Lim.
Yeah, yeah, very kind person to talk to. Never met Ron Lim, but great guy to talk to there as well.
It was great. It was, for some reason, like he'd had a very long line at several points. Um, I would walk by, but for some reason, maybe he was just getting back from somewhere,
Hmm.
like uh, what do you call it? Like a panel or something, right?
Hmm.
And so he was just sitting there sketching, and I walked up, and he sketched it right in front of me, and it was just a great experience because that would have been in that same era of like the Eric Masterson Thor and the Fantastic Four I talked about, where Ron Lim was doing Silver Surfer. So to me that's a great era.
Yeah, yeah. I went up and told him this too after you talked with him, and I just said like your Silver Surfer is definitive. I mean, when I think about Silver Surfer, I think about that design, the sort of like screen glare sort of
Yeah,
effect, and you probably said something similar to him. But definitely somebody that lives in our creative minds as well.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'll say one more thing uh, about Heroes Con. Somebody that really impressed me was John Romita Jr.
Hmm.
because it seemed like every time I would glance over there, and I got to go through his line myself, but every fan that stepped up to him, he stood up, he shook their hand, and said, some greeting like "Good to meet you" or "How you doing" or something like that. And just the professionalism
Yeah,
that I saw from this legend. I mean, he's a
yeah,
legend.
totally.
Um, it was inspiring, I would say.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about you? What are some memories that you have from Heroes Con?
Well, walking around with you, of course, meeting up with now our mutual friend Sturge, always a fun time. For those of you that ever want to know how kind Adam is, he did in fact buy me a Blue Beetle superpowers action figure, so now we have a matching set. So
Yeah.
that's living right over here. But yeah, lots of kind creators, lots of people that I always like to stop by and say hello to. Sarah Meyer is a colorist and artist, so I stopped and talked with them. The book Monstrous is up for an Eisner this year, so big fingers crossed for Sarah Meyer. J. Robert Deans is always a nice person to talk to, and then there was someone named Simon Beasley there as well, who had this sort of rock and roll meets comics aspect, very in line with what we've talked about here. And the fun thing was we were headed to a panel was shortly after meeting him, and his panel was just down the hallway. So he was asking, now, where is this panel? Where am I supposed to go? And then he said, well, what did they say about me in the program, in his wonderful British accent that I'm not going to massacre by pretending. And I said, oh, it says you're incredibly handsome. And he seemed to really like that. So love talking with him. Just all sorts of folks. I can't think of a negative experience there. And then getting to hear a little bit and talk with Bo Hampton, who worked
Okay.
on Batman stuff. I'm
Yeah.
big into the DC stuff, and who now has his own projects cooking and working. That was also a lot of fun. And so I walked away with a book of his with a very sort of supernatural creature sketch inside. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And I'll give a final nod to two guys that were also very kind. Gavin Guidry signed my Superman 78. And Drew Moss and I had a great conversation about how Thundercats needs to live on in the mind of youth.
You know, Drew Moss, I got to meet him as well, and he was a truly kind person.
Definitely.
Um, he said, I got a signature. I think I got a print from him signed. And then he said, oh, man, you want a Thundercat sticker? I was like, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, sure. And he said, well, here, take a couple. And I just
Hmm.
mentioned that I teach like a little comic class at my school. And he's like, oh, well, here, man. And he gave me a whole stack. And so I'll give those away this coming school year
Yeah, yeah.
to anybody who'd want a Thundercat sticker. So just a truly nice guy. And
Always great. Always great to pass on the goodies. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, you're fine. I would watch some videos on YouTube, whether it was like just a fan going or whether it was a professional talking about their experience, and everybody was saying the same thing that like Heroes Con is like the best comic convention.
Totally. Totally.
And that was from a number of people. And I feel very fortunate to be, 2 hours away from it.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so that was, that's cool to hear that it's such a big deal to so many people,
Yeah.
creators. And I was in front of some guy from Texas, like his family drove up from Texas just to go to Heroes Con. So, um, it's just crazy. It brings in all sorts of people. It's awesome. Good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've learned so much about comics since chatting with you and exploring things with you. Um, and just the wonderful experiences at Heroes Con. I'd sort of heard of it, I think, before you and I really kicked off our comics discussions. But all credit goes to you for getting those experiences in my life. So much appreciation here.
Well,
Uh,
you are welcome. You're
yeah,
welcome.
yeah, yeah. Definitely a show worth going to, and great place to always hang out with you, as well as in the comic Obsessive.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I guess we will wrap it up for today, and I guess we will say to stay obsessive
Stay obsessive with comics. With
with,
comics, not like Cartier. That would be more expensive. Well, I mean, it depends. It
yeah,
depends if you get it slabbed and graded and signed and witnessed
right,
and
right.
bronzed and stuff. But
Yeah,
stay obsessive. I say
yep.
all that to say stay obsessive.
Uh,
Yeah, I should leave that alone.
all right.